Welcome, everyone, to a very special episode of Conversations in the Void. Yes, we're here on a Saturday evening, not a typical Wednesday night, but it's because we have a guest so special that he's going to be on here for 2 episodes, one later in October. He is a writer, director, producer at filmmakers with works including Let's Scare Jessica to Death, Bang the Drum Slowly, and Prancer. Please welcome to the Void, the one and only John D Hancock.
Hello, I'm glad to be here.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm good.
Enjoying the nice heat wave we're having in this area?
Yeah, I went fishing in the heat in my pond today.
Yeah?
Caught tiny little bluegills.
Awesome. Yeah, because I know we're relatively close to each other where we're at. So
we are.
But yeah,
30 miles maybe, huh?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm excited because I know we're gonna meet up for coffee and just discuss things off screen and all that fun stuff too. But enough about that. Let's get into a little bit about you, John, and kind of what you do. So, with being a filmmaker and working and directing at like theatrical stage and stuff like that, how did you get into this world of creativity and directing and all that stuff?
Well, I grew up in the western suburbs of Chicago. I grew up in Berwyn and Cicero. And my father was a musician, so that there was already an interest in the arts from that. I was going to be a musician, but when I went away to college, I started directing, and I really liked it in the theater. So I directed a lot of plays in college, and I knew immediately that was what I wanted to do. When I graduated, I went to New York, and I was lucky enough to do a very successful play off Broadway, a hit of a Brecht play, A Man's a Man, that really got me started and got me other jobs. And so I worked in the theater maybe 8 years. And then I got a grant from the American Film Institute to do a short. And it was nominated for Academy Award. And then I got my first 2 features out of that. So that's how I got started.
Now, do you feel that working with your dad being a musician and performing that really helped you get into that side of it more?
I do. I mean, I feel I kind of, my musical background, I feel I've used that in my work as a director, in the rhythms and, a cello rondo, retards. I mean, I kind of, you can think musically about rhythms. In directing, yeah.
Now, I know Let's Scare Jessica to Death is one of the your first features that you did. I will get into that a little bit later. But do you consider yourself a fan of the horror genre as a whole? I do,
sure. I'm not as rabid as the devotees. I go to various screenings for Jessica, and a lot of people come in hoodies, and some guys, actually, at one in Chicago had his or maybe it was Toronto, had his teeth filed, so he had vampire teeth by a dentist. It was.
Oh wow,
that's committed. I'm not.
Yeah,
that's not my spirit.
I said obviously we love love horror movies and stuff like too. Like I said, especially Let's Scare Jessica to Death, and everything and anything as well. But do you recall like your first horror movie by chance that you saw?
Oh, probably Frankenstein and Dracula, those things. Yeah, Frankenstein, I would imagine. Yeah, I was very frightened of Frankenstein.
Now, I
was frightened. I mean, my first really scary experience was The Wizard of Oz. I had to be taken screaming from the theater when the trees reached out.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah,
that's not a horror picture, but that's that part of it. No, monkeys, that's horror stuff, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's definitely horror aspects of The Wizard of Oz for sure. And I think even if we talk about like Frankenstein, Dracula, and we really feel that like the older movies, even 30s through 60s, even Vincent Price stuff is very theatrical in their presentation.
Yeah. Right. I was also very scared by a zombie movie as a kid that was kind of a Caribbean setting where they were dealing with the transmigration of souls. I don't remember the name of it, but I was scared of zombies.
Oh yeah, it's really interesting because you bring that up. The original zombies were or voodoo created, not
Right. Yeah.
the bitten and passed on like a genetic disease,
Right.
essentially. I think it's just funny, going through the history of horror, you see that progression, and it kind of goes into like our fears of as a society, what we had at that point in time. And I always view it as a good time capsule for anything that's
Oh, we
there.
were afraid of black people at that point.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But like I said, even let's say Let's Scare Jessica to Death, and that has some pretty heavy hitting themes in that movie too. I would say for the time period,
Which,
like
I
the
was,
ga- really the gaslighting that was there, that was for Jessica in the movie,
yeah.
and that I think that was for like that time period was pretty unique as a whole.
It had, certain, it dealt with hippies a little bit and
Hmm.
American Legion types. And I mean, there was this kind of, it reflected the political climate, but not in an important way, really. I mean, it was really a personal story about a poor woman.
Right.
Very well performed by Zora Lampert, I thought.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I completely agree. And she wasn't she in The Exorcist 3 as well?
I don't know, was she?
I think so. I think she was the wife of one of the characters, which, if that's the case, you have a couple of your movies that have ties to actors in The Exorcist 1 and 3.
Who's in one?
I think he was a priest.
Oh, yeah. Barton Heyman, right.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I've worked with Barton a lot in the theater. He was in my acting company in San Francisco and Pittsburgh and New York. And yeah, I always tried to use Barton if I could.
yeah, and that's it's great. You have that even before these movies came out, the deep rooted ties in the horror world, especially said with Let's Scare Jessica to Death, and we'll get into your other works as well. Now, when you were making these movies, how did you find it to be different from doing theatrical plays and off Broadway stuff?
Well, I really didn't know how to do a movie. I mean, I looked at a lot of Hitchcock before I did Let's Scare Jessica to Death. I mean, I rented a projector and borrowed a lot of prints of Hitchcock pictures and screened them over and over in my living room. So that was my education to some degree, but it was mainly just learn as you go.
Mm-hmm.
I was sent a script initially for Let's Scare Jessica to Death that was called "It Drinks Hippie Blood."
Mm.
It was a parody of a scary movie, and I didn't think it was funny or scary. So I told the producers, "Well, I would love to do this if you let me rewrite it and make it not a parody, make it a scary movie." And they said, "Well, sure." So that's what we did.
And that's how you got Let's Scare Jessica to Death, then?
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, I was recommended for that by William Wyler's daughter. She was Joe Levine's development person at that point. He was a big producer in New York, and I guess through him, she met father and son Charles Moss Sr. and Jr., and they had a company, B.S. Moss Enterprises. They had the Criterion Theater, which is the premier. It's where Lawrence would play in New York,
Right.
or My Fair Lady or whatever. And they had maybe, I don't know, 12 or maybe 20 other theaters scattered around New England. And they wanted to make a scary picture, and were looking for a director, and she recommended me.
That's a heck of a way to get in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, were you nervous doing your first feature film? I know you had done the short, but do you think you had directing under control or in the bag at that point in time?
Well, to some degree, I did. I mean, directing movies is not entirely different than directing in the theater. You have the same problems. How do you get the most out of a group of people?
Mm-hmm.
What's clear? What's funny? what's good enough.
Right.
So it's not a totally foreign field. And how do you work with actors, and how do you? I didn't know about lenses. That confused me for quite a while.
Right.
I didn't know how important it was to set marks so that the assistant cameraman could keep it in focus.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, do you feel like when you're filming Let's Scare Jessica to Death that you took it from like the kind of like the theatrical point of view and setting the stage with everything just being in front of the camera instead of the audience?
No. I'd watched enough movies to understand the difference.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't feel it. I didn't feel like I was doing like blocking for the stage or something. I thought I was blocking for the camera.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I've worked on some smaller productions of indie horror stuff like that too, and a lot of the actors that we work with are stage actors,
Right.
and it is a completely different beast for them. Going to the camera, make sure you don't look into the camera.
Well, and also how big things have to be. Now, these were stage actors that I was dealing with. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Martin, Kevin, Mary Claire. I mean, Zora. Zora had she done? No, I don't think she had done Splendor in the Grass at that point. I don't think so. Maybe she had. I don't know. But she was not a seasoned film actress. And I didn't feel that I was dealing with actors that were giving theatrical performances that I had to say less.
Mm-hmm.
I usually, I have had that later with actors that were primarily from the theater. But I don't remember having that on Let's Go Jessica to Death. It seemed that they kind of knew how to adjust for the camera.
And that's good. Do you feel like your work with the theater helped rein that down? Because you knew exactly what they were going for, if it would be a stage production versus the movie.
Yeah.
Now, between you've done TV shows, you've done movies, and you've done theater. Do you have a preference of the type of production you work in?
I enjoy both. I mean, television is less interesting
Mm.
because in television you're often working for the executive producer in a way that, I mean, in feature films you're kind of the boss. I mean, you aren't entirely, but
Right.
you're pretty close to Mussolini if you choose to be, right? But
Right.
In Hill Street Blues or something, you're working for the writers. You want to change a line, you have to have the assistant director get the guy on the phone for you and ask if you could do it and that kind of stuff. And I didn't really mind that. I just reset my power dial to be obedient, relatively,
Right.
Sometimes I would have casting disagreements, but not often,
Right. Now we're talking about TV shows like Hill Street Blues and Twilight Zone. I know you did some segments on Twilight Zone. What was that like working on that? Were you a fan of the original Twilight Zone TV show?
Very much. I mean, who isn't?
Right.
Yeah, no one dislikes it. I didn't feel the scripts were quite as strong for the revival of Hill Street, but they were good enough, and it was a terribly well-run organization. Phil Daguerre, the executive producer, was really good and nice, and the producers like Harvey Frand of individual episodes, the ADs were good, the DP was good. It was a really well-run organization, and it was very pleasant to work there, and I enjoyed doing those. I enjoyed doing directing them more than I enjoyed looking at them. But
How come?
well, it's television. Um, I mean, I was proud of some of the work. I did something I called about the Kennedy assassination called Profiles in Silver. I'm very proud of.
Now, was there any like were people like yourself just ecstatic to be on like the revival of Twilight Zone? Was everyone there like a big as fan as you, perhaps?
Oh yeah, yeah, and the writers. I mean, it was. Uh, yeah, everybody loved the Twilight Zone, so it was. People were proud to work on it. Yeah.
Now, was there any weird rules like you guys thought, oh, we shouldn't, rewrite or redo an episode of the original and just keep it streamlined and as close to the original as possible?
I don't think. Yeah, I think there was no effort to redo any of the original episodes. I think that would have been
Mm-hmm.
a mistake. I think they were seeking new material, um, and it was very hard to equal the scripts for the original episodes. I probably because um, the executive producer on the original episode had a true demonic quality. I mean, I think he was very serious about Scary
Oh,
in a way that maybe Phil DeGuerre, who was very charming and very competent, he didn't have an evil soul. So,
right.
and it's hard, it's hard to assemble a writing room that can come up with that many. There were 3 in every hour, so it's a lot of little shorts.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that we've tried to remake these episodes. Now, obviously, we had the Twilight Zone movie that came out in the '80s that were remakes of 3 classic episodes, and then even the revival we had. I think there's one in the '90s, and then Jordan Peele's. They are almost remaking the episodes as opposed to being a companion show to them.
Yeah, and it's effective. I haven't seen them. Jordan Peele it's working.
I think it's canceled now. I think it ran for 2 seasons, but I mean, I think it's interesting to touch that because I would consider Twilight Zone to be like the quintessential sci-fi horror TV show that you don't mess with.
Yeah. You don't want to get in rivalry there.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a question from the chat is, for the Twilight Zone episodes, what was the process or realization of the stories? Like, were they given to you, okay, make the story, or did you get to pick them?
Oh, they were given to me. They were offered to me. Yeah. And I mean, they came as screenplays, not as outlines or as story ideas. They came already written without, just direct this. Don't. Yeah, I mean, I suppose, suggest different lines here and there, but that wasn't the job I was hired to do.
Right. Yeah, I would have loved to have been on set of any Twilight Zone production just to see it,
Oh,
so,
the original. You mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Now, were there anyone returning from the original series that came back for the revival in the '80s that you got to work with?
I don't think so. No, I wonder. I mean, I suppose we could have gotten Burgess Meredith, but no, not that I. Whether they specifically avoided that, I don't know, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I watched the Twilight Zone. Too long, as a matter of fact. I think that was probably the first DVD set I got my parents was of the original Twilight Zone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you are a fan.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's my co-host and producer. His favorite story is 5 people in search of an exit, and that genre that is still done in movies today too. That originated in the Twilight Zone. So I think it's interesting and just a testament to the quality of the earlier works that we've had in the world that we still follow those stories today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Many, people have wanted to remake Let's Scare Jessica to Death a number of times. I think Michael Bay's company was trying to do it at this.
Oh, Platinum Dunes?
Yeah. And they had some good scripts. It was Let's Scare Laurie to Death. Let's Scare Cynthia to Death.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to attack series of women.
Now, how would you feel about a remake?
Kind of ambivalent. I mean, if it's better, I'd be humiliated. If it's shitty, I'd feel humiliated. I don't know why is it good. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't know how I would do it. Because part of what's good about Jessica is the lameness of it, and if I tried to do it better, I might make it worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I can see people trying to make it like an R-rated horror movie and do it that way, but it's because when this came out, PG-13 wasn't a rating that was available at that point in time, so it is a PG horror movie, which is rare, I would say.
It was X in England when it first opened. Yeah,
really,
for violence. I mean, it was crazy. It was a mistake.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting to see it X for violence. I know their rating systems were harsher.
Oh, that was really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Now with any of the stuff that you've done, Let's Scare Jessica or TV or anything like that, do you recall like the hardest scene to get done that you've worked on?
Well, I did a picture with Nick Nolte called Weeds about a prison drama group on tour.
Mm-hmm.
And they played Dannemora prison and caused a prison riot. And the riot sequence was shooting in prisons and in a very, very cold cement factory that we had turned into a prison auditorium. Those were hard. They turned out really well, but in terms of hard work, what do you mean by hard? You mean
like the most, like maybe it took way too many takes to get done, or just like even camera angles and just getting everything lined up?
I did an HBO thing called Steal the Sky, and there was a battle with a helicopter evacuation and on a hillside, and that was, I think of what were my hardest days' work.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably it was either the riot sequence in Weeds or the battle in Steal the Sky, where I did the just running up and down a hill.
How many takes did that take to get?
Oh, 60. I don't know. I mean,
right.
A lot of shots. Yeah.
Yeah. You always hear the horror stories of Stanley Kubrick saying, "Okay, do this 100 times until you get it right."
Yeah, I'm not in that school. I think that's crazy.
Yeah.
You can't. First of all, you can't digest that many takes in the editing room. It's bullshit. You can't. How do you keep your perspective over 100 takes? How do you decide which is the best one?
Right.
I think Eyes Wide Shut suffers from that. I'll bet there were better takes for her performance that he didn't play. I bet the early takes were better before he killed off her confidence.
Right.
Successive takes. Yeah.
Yeah. I can only imagine. Like I said, I do small independent horror movies. We do maybe 6 max, just because we are run gun shooting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people do 1.
Yeah. Yeah. It's in my short time in the independent horror film industry, it's amazing what I've seen, what I've done, and what I'm being given the opportunities to do too. You know, I think a good horror movie, especially like let's say Jessica, is a independent horror movie. You have a close knit crew, close knit cast, and everything,
Yeah.
and I think it holds better to a movie than having 1,000 people telling everyone what to do.
I've never tried the other. Yeah. The most takes I think I've ever gone is like 19 or 20. Yeah.
Now, as the director, do you get to, go through the edits and the cuts and help pick out what scenes you want?
Oh yeah, I'm there the whole time in the editing room.
Okay.
Yeah, I control the editing process. Except I did a picture for AIP where I lost control of it, and it was such an unpleasant experience. I never wanted to repeat it.
Right.
California Dreaming, I lost control of the editing process.
Now, what's that experience like for you with the editing? Do you obviously you're sitting there the entire time? You must really enjoy it.
I do. It's you can really get things, pretty close to right, and control the rhythms properly. And I mean, it's very satisfying. It's addictive too. It's hard to go home. Just a couple more cuts.
Right.
A little more. So. Yeah, I enjoy editing.
Now, do you ever sit there and just go, okay, I have to walk away from this? If I keep at this forever, post production is going to take way too long.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. You have to also, I mean, one of the big problems in directing is how do you keep your perspective?
Mm-hmm.
And you do need to walk away from it occasionally to get your perspective back. I usually solve that problem as much as I can by having screenings. I'll screen, cut for a week, screen again, cut for another week, screen again, cut for 2 weeks. And that helps,
Yeah. It's for me, I do a couple YouTube channels. I have a, podcast, stuff like that. I'm getting into editing myself. And I know with stuff I'm trying to edit and put up line, like I don't like editing my face on the screen and having to watch me do it again and again and again.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, I would have trouble editing myself.
Yeah. I would much rather go someone I know, hey, do this part for me.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, it's just been an absolute blast, sitting there, head busted open, for a scene that's going to take, that's 30 seconds of the film, but I'm in makeup for 7 hours.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting there, I just remembered laying on the ground with the script in my hand, kind of directing the scene as I'm on the ground.
Oh, that's funny. No director's chair, the ground.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, we're that small of a group that when we do these movies, everyone has every hat to wear that we possibly can.
Right. Well, it's satisfying.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's we have a few more shoots to do. We had health issues with some of our people, so we're getting back to it hopefully here in a couple of weeks, and we're gonna finish up. And it's the first movie that I co-wrote. So
Jessica was a union crew. I mean, it was not a tiny crew. It wasn't it wasn't big.
Right.
I mean, it was a kind of modified union crew. We didn't have Teamsters, and the Teamsters came to the set in Connecticut and said, you really should have union Teamsters on this because these BNC cameras they break so easy.
Mm.
So we gave them $10,000 and they went away. Then a couple weeks later they came back for another 10. But I mean, we had the camera assistants and the sound department were a union. I like working non-union, but I've done maybe 3 or 4 non-union pictures recently, but I always pay the sound man and the focus puller real well.
Right.
because I want it in focus, and I want to be able to understand the
Yeah, that's very important. For
yeah.
sure. So another question here. From your earlier stuff to your latest, what dramatically changed in directing, or what stayed the same?
Well, I learned about lenses. Um, what I don't know. I feel I've been doing the same thing the whole time. I don't know how much. I mean, my earlier work was good. I thought. I still think it is. So it's kind of. I don't feel that my work has changed very much.
So your process has stayed the same then.
Yeah.
Now, do you ever sit there and are able to enjoy a movie for being a movie, or do you ever go back into your work brain and go, "This is how I would have shot it," or anything like that?
Oh, you mean somebody else's movie?
Yeah.
No, I just enjoy movies. I don't do that too. My own work, as I look at my own work, it varies very much. If sometimes I'll look at it and all I see are what I did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Other times I'll see it with an audience that's laughing and enjoying it a lot, and it just seems wonderful to me. So my view of my own work changes depending on who I'm seeing it with, and just on the given night how I'm happen to be feeling or something.
Right.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Like I said, when we did another show, we do a pre-recorded podcast where we review movies each week, like 3 to 4 movies a week.
Right.
And I find myself now, we've been doing over 100 episodes of that, and not being able to sit back and enjoy a movie anymore.
Because you're writing the review while you're watching it.
Usually it's always horror movies that we review, but like even stuff like not for our show, I'm just going. I already start making those notes in my head.
Right, sure. Yeah, I can see where that would become an obstacle. Yeah, and just the need to have a view rather than just take it in a passive way. Yeah.
Yeah, and it bothers me, but also realizes that I've been doing it long enough that I can have that process in my head too. Right. And like I said, in almost 3 years, we reviewed. Or 2 years, about 350 movies.
Oh my! Wow.
with no end in sight. So I'm using this as my learning tool, like you did with watching Hitchcock. Is when I'm starting to write screenplays and shorts, stuff like that too. Picking up pieces like, okay, what I liked and what I didn't like about particular movies.
Yeah. What movies have you liked a lot in this period of time?
I'd have to look at our list. We keep track of all her ratings. We have some really high highs, like 10s across the board. So that came out this year. Man, we just watched Alien Romulus this week, and I thought that was fantastic. Now we have watched some movies that we didn't rate very high at all this year, just because there was. We don't usually pan any special effects or anything like that, because if the story's great, the story's gonna be great. You have characters you care about. Yeah. But there's just stuff that we try not to be too harsh, but we make our highlights and low points just overall. Off the top of my head, one I couldn't say that we got. There's no zeros this year. Let's go with that. Last year in 2022, there was a couple, but it's just because it seemed like a corporate money grab more than anything else. Like it wasn't made by people that truly cared about the film.
Yeah. Right.
And I think passion really shines through in movies if you're really passionate about it in your work.
Yeah. Well, I was passionate about Let's Scare Jessica to Death. I mean, I think that's what's good about it. I was very serious about there was something actually scary about the world. I wasn't just fooling around. And that's what the Twilight Zone had, the original Twilight Zone. He was serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with some of the shorts I want to do. I want to take societal questions and caveats to what we just deem as normal in today's world that we really shouldn't.
Yeah.
We want to talk about, obviously AI is a huge thing. Talk about COVID. That's now we're past it a lot. We can kind of talk about the societal norms that really shouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to do a horror movie because you can have the jump scares galore, but if you have a solid story that makes you think the entire way through, especially like what Let's Scare Jessica to Death, you don't know if she's kind of losing it or if she's being gaslit and really what's going on in her head.
Yeah. Well, I was very influenced by um, it's called The Innocents, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
yeah, and a Henry James novel,
Hmm.
and so I was trying to do that. I was trying to make it so you could not tell whether it was in her head or real.
Right. Now, what was like for you seeing your movie up on the big screens for the first time?
Well, it was one of the great nights of my life. It was in the Criterion Theater on Broadway and 42nd, 43rd,
Hmm.
and it was a full house because Paramount had an incredible ad campaign, and it was maybe 75% black, the audience, and it was the most vocal, most thrilling audience I've ever witnessed. I mean, they just went crazy. So that was a great night. Yeah.
For sure. And I have to ask, when you were making Bang the Drum Slowly with Robert De Niro, did you know he was going to become a household name? Did you ever have that inkling with him?
I thought he was wonderful. I thought he was really good. I thought there was a possibility, sure. I didn't realize it would become as big as it was, but I thought this guy is a sensational actor. So I knew, yeah,
You knew?
yeah,
I mean, that's got to feel good to know, like, hey, we really helped get him his start.
yeah. It does, yeah, yeah. It really does.
Now, with your work over your time, you said you worked in New York. You've probably gone to LA and made stuff too. So, how did you come to settle back down to the Indiana area and make filmmakers?
Well, I moved to LA in 1975 in the wake of Bang That I'm Slowly, or 73, 70, sometime in there, 73, I think. And I lived there for 20 years. Our house in Malibu burnt in one of those big wildfires in 1993.
Oh,
And I felt if I rebuilt it, it was in a canyon and 400 other houses burned. I thought, well, this will burn again. This canyon business is meant to burn. And I don't want to rebuild it. So I moved back to the family fruit farm in Indiana, Northwest Indiana.
okay.
And it's worked fine for me. I had made Prancer here, and I'd had such a happy experience doing it on our farm that I wanted to repeat that. And I think I made 5 or 6 pictures in this area on our farm mostly.
I didn't realize Prancer was that local to me.
Oh yeah, Three Oaks and LaPorte. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
There's a 35th anniversary is coming up, and Three Oaks is, they're going to be a big celebration there and in LaPorte.
That's going to be December, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. This is not too far from me. I'll probably try to make it up there or over there.
That'd be fun. That'd be great. You could have your picture taken with a reindeer.
There you go. So when you're getting projects to direct or even produce and that you're working on, especially like filmmakers, how do you select what you want to work on?
Well, I'm only producing things that I would direct. I don't produce for other people. I don't know. It's a mysterious project, process, isn't it? I mean, I've got a wonderful script now called A Love Story that's about where a New York detective falls in love with a female serial killer.
Oh,
And I don't know how that came to me, but it did. I started to write, and it just came. And I'm waiting for lightning to strike again in that same way.
yeah.
And I'm getting a little frustrated. I wish I had something to work on right now.
Well, so we'll have to talk. I have lots of stuff I'm trying to work on right now. Way too much, actually,
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, people send me things. Sure.
So I guess the kind of question is, what's next for you? What do you have cooking? Anything right now?
Well, hopefully this female serial killer picture. Yeah.
Are you planning on doing that maybe in 2025 and filming it?
Trying to.
Trying to?
I'm trying to get it financed. Yeah.
That's always a kicker, isn't it?
It's not a cheap picture. It shoots in New York and has stuff on water. You know, it's not a cheap picture.
Right. For sure. And before we get into kind of our wrap up here questions, because times flew for me, with all your stage work, do you have a favorite stage play?
Well, almost the thing I'm proudest of in my whole career is a production of Midsummer Night's Dream that I won the Obie for, and I would love to do that again sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking I would like to do a play around here too. And I'm trying to figure out what play I'd like to do. Yeah.
Because it seems like you've worked on a lot of classic plays as a whole.
Yeah, classic, well, and new plays, but classic. Yeah, right.
Now, do you have a soft spot in your heart for any particular writer, or do you like Shakespeare the most?
Yeah, I like Shakespeare the most. Tennessee Williams, I like.
Yeah.
I've done Brecht. I mean, I've done a lot of Brecht and Tennessee Williams and Shakespeare.
Awesome.
Chekhov.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from the audience saying we should crowdfund for the upcoming movie. Have you had to deal with any of that crap yet?
We tried to fund The Looking Glass, but you don't take in enough money to help. I mean, it's what you take in is small.
Right.
I'm not. I like 40 shooting days. So I'm kind of spoiled.
Yeah.
I know how to work very cheaply, but I don't know how to work that fast.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, our run and gun for the indie stuff we do is we're maybe at about 8 days for our stuff.
Yeah. Right. So.
Yeah. We call ourselves weekend warriors just because we all have full-time jobs outside of the movie making. Right. So it's all we can do just to shoot some couple weekends to get it going.
Yeah. Well, that's a way of doing it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not something I've done.
Now, in your career, with everything that's going on here, do you think CGI will ever overtake practical effects?
No. Do you?
No. I think there will always be a spot for practical. Maybe helped by CGI, but practical, I think, is always better.
I think so too. Yeah, the more you can actually do. Yeah. I mean, CGI is too perfect in a way. That's why it looks unreal. It's framed too perfectly. You need those little glitches that come from it being real.
Right.
You need the cloudiness in the water. You need the fact that the stunt is not framed perfectly.
Right. Yeah. Have you had to deal with just a whole green screen?
Not very, very little. Yeah.
Very little.
It's not I haven't enjoyed it.
I think it'd be hard to kind of envision it in your head when you can't see it.
Yeah. Well, then you have to have enough budget that if you don't like it, you can go back and do it again.
Right.
Yeah.
we'll see how that turns out in the future too.
Yeah.
But
and it's so costly too. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just absurd. You see through the credits, and you have 100 VFX artists.
Yeah, right.
And there's no set designs anymore. And
Somebody's paying them, right?
yeah. All right, so John, $1 million question here: if you were given an unlimited budget to make a movie in an existing IP or franchise, would you do one, and what would it be?
Well, it would be the screenplay I want to do about the serial. Yeah, sure.
But would you ever say, I want to make a Marvel movie?
No, I'm not interested in that.
Not interested?
No.
Star Wars, none of that?
No, definitely not.
All right. So do you have any advice for any aspiring directors and writers and producers?
Well, they're not things you're going to want to hear. One of them is go to Los Angeles. I don't know that you can have a career from here. Just how ruthless you have to be, and how tough you have to be to survive, I think, and to absorb the rejections and keep going and leave no stone unturned and keep making the phone call and writing the letter and how much hustling. I mean, the proportion of how much directing and how much hustling, the percentage of each is surprising. I suppose it's just to go ahead and make a film is the principal advice, right?
Right. Yeah, because anyone who's made a movie knows how painful the process can be, and just sometimes it's a miracle that it even gets made.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just
it's a pleasure too. I mean, I really enjoy working. So, but yeah, it's not all fun.
Now, would you have any advice for your younger self that you wish you knew when you started this?
Well, I think I would have benefited from a freehand drawing class, so I could do better storyboards. I think as a communication device, that's potentially very useful, and I wish I'd been able to draw from the start of my career. I wish I had paid more. I wish I'd taken more still photographs in my teens, so that I learned about lenses and exposures, and
right.
Both those things would have accelerated my film directing.
Yeah, it's study is really what you got to do. I feel like.
Also, I mean, could I have been smoother with people when I was starting out? I mean, I have gotten better with people. Yeah. So, less temper, Right.
For sure. Well, John, we are at our time here for tonight. I really appreciate you coming on.
I've enjoyed this, and I'm glad you had me. I'm glad to do it.
Yes,
I look forward to around Thanksgiving. That'll be good.
Yes, absolutely. I said we'll
Halloween.
Yes, around Halloween. Yes, and we'll meet up and get coffee and discuss more behind the scenes stuff for sure.
That's great. Okay, thank you. Good.
All right, thank you, John, for coming on, and thank you for everyone for watching. And we'll see you next time. Don't get lost in the void. You have a good night.
All right.
Bye.